Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much for joining the Hoover Institution's Project on China's Global Sharp Power for the latest event in our speaker series, Feminism in China After 2013, Social Movements, Media, and the State. I'm Frances Hisgen, the Senior Research Program Manager here at Hoover for CGSP. And today I'm really honored to be joined by Li Sipan. Dr. Li received her PhD in political sociology from the University of Macau. She's currently a visiting scholar at Stanford and was previously a scholar in residence at the Beatrice Bain Research Group, just up the street at the University of California, Berkeley, and an associate professor at Shantou University in the People's Republic of China. And in addition to her academic work, Li is a former journalist who established the feminist organization Women Awakening Network in 2004, which developed a national reputation for its focus on gender equality in journalism and communication. And Li has coordinated many landmark advocacy projects on anti-sexual harassment policy and anti-domestic violence legislation. Her current research focuses on the difference in media strategies between generations of Chinese feminist activism. And I'd be remiss to say that Li's writing on feminism in China is a touchstone for many feminists in my generation and younger. I know Simon said that he teaches her work in class. And I'll just say that everybody, when they're done with this event, should look up a San Francisco Chronicle piece from last year, which talks about how Li's scholarship inspired a group of young diaspora women to start a Chinese feminist stand-up collective. So we won't have stand-up comedy today, but we will have a fantastic presentation. So over to you, Sipan.
Thank you. Thank you, Francis. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share my research. I have learned about the Hoover institution since I was very, very young, but I never imagined having a chance speak here. So before my lecture, I'd like to introduce myself. Many of my significant decisions are closely tied to feminism. I was an investigative journalist at a liberal Southern press group, but I realized gender equality was not part of China's liberal reform agenda. In 2004, I founded the feminist NGO Women Awakening Network to change attitude toward feminism of journalist community. I've long worked in gender violence, reporting on several sexual assault cases in workplaces and education. My reporting influenced news coverage of sexual violence, as investigative journalism in China previously ignored these issues. Our advocacy also led to the Ministry of Education issuing its first anti-sexual harassment document. In Guangzhou, our organization created a public sphere friendly to women's issue in a male-centric media environment. By mobilizing media coverage, we attracted public attention, supported victims, and influenced policy and laws. I also trained young feminist activists and journalists for inclusion issues. As a scholar, my original dissertation focused on the internet transformation of the press industry. However, the arrest of Feminist 5 in 2015 prompted me to change my topic and decide to document the movement history and probe its future. Over the past 20 years, I have witnessed changes in the relationship between the government and NGOs, as well as the decline of liberal media and civil society. My research on the feminist movement is not detached or objective, as I am also a participant. The history of the feminist movement is part of my life history. I'm sorry, the nomination doesn't work. So This is an article, maybe the most widespread article of me. Yeah, this is a 2013 speech by Chinese Chairman Xi. Many casuals and experts working with the All China Women's Federation were surprised because it contradicted the Communist Party's traditional view on women, expressing a conservative gender norm. But today we want to discuss the leader's view on women because over the past decades, it is a feminist movement to have shaped the mainstream discourse on women in society, compelling the government to respond with policies. I would like to show you a picture of Xia Rui, a Chinese feminist and LGBT rights activist who recently spoke at the Geneva Summit of Human Rights and Democracy. She participated in the White Paper movement, first being detained for a month for protests and then jailed for almost a month last year for cosplay white paper of Shanghai Halloween, which was full of similar political satire, but she was the most direct. It's an example of noteworthy trend. Women are becoming more visible and active in China's contentious politics. If we want to focus on the change in China, we must focus on the changes in women. For reasons you can understand, Chinese feminist movement does not focus on political representation. Rather, it primarily addresses economic, social, and cultural rights. There is some relevant data, including education and income. It's important to note the excellent performance of Chinese women, especially young women, in the higher education and still severe gender gaps in the job market and income. This timeline documents the change of the last decade. The black section represents the government's increased media censorship, arrest of feminists, and the tightened control of NGOs. The dark pink section emphasizes the legislative progress in women's rights and gender equality, which has continued over the years. The enactment of the anti-domestic violence law, the revision of the women's law, and the women's rights related articles in the civil code have come from the joint efforts of the ACWF and the different generations of feminist activists. At least at the textual level, we have made progress. Of course, this does not only concern gender-based violence. The civil code and the women's law also deal with various aspects of women's rights, such as family property and land rights. It's important to emphasize that much of the progress made in combating sexual violence has been driven by civil society. The blue section represents feminist actions and protests. Despite the deteriorating external situation, feminists have used the creativity to speak out, protest, and demand a response from the government. This might seem complex, so I highlight a few key points. When we talk about changes in political opportunities, we mainly refer to the government and the media. In the 2012, the government's main target was the civil rights movement, and feminist issues were not considered politically sensitive. Market-oriented newspapers and television supported the mass mobilization transformation of the movement. In the 2015, the arrest of Feminist 5 signaled that state has begun to target feminism for suppression. After that year, the watchdog role of market-oriented media weakened, making it difficult for them to pressure the government. As one door closed, another opened. The internet purge drove away male public intellectuals, helping the rise of feminism on social media. This allowed feminist organizations to coordinate a broad movement through social media in the following 2 years. In 2017, the foreign NGO law restricted feminism NGOs in terms of funding and security. The feminist movement increasingly relied on social media, becoming more decentralized rather than directed by tangible organizations. This structure propelled the peak of the movement, the MeToo movement. In 2020, social control became stricter due to the COVID policy. However, women's voice and mutual aid during the crisis strengthened the social capital of the feminist movement, encouraging more people to engage in public debates and events. In different environments, each specific action involved different discourses and practice. Also, the resources available determine strategies. Activists outside the system have almost nothing. What they possess is the understanding of the constituency's needs and the strategic use of media. We all know that the media is crucial for social movement. In China's context, one institutional channel for political participation are lacking. The media plays an even more important role in social movements than liberal pluralistic systems. I will skip the literature part. And a year before Xi's speech, feminist participatory activism began to take a stage. Early in 2012, in Guangzhou, there was Occupy Men's Toilets campaign using performance art by occupying men's bathrooms in parks. It highlighted the shortage of women's public restrooms and sent letters demanding rectification to city construction department. This received significant support from market-oriented media. A group of young female college students became media favorites. These media reports also encouraged more young women to engage in campaigns. In those years, feminist movement training camps flourished nationwide, with almost every month witnessing a demonstration in public space use performance art. 2012 became a watershed year for the Chinese feminist movement, marking the beginning of a new era of mass mobilization. In fact, this was part of a series of youth-led participation and government accountability actions occurring in the South. The young feminist movement was not the earliest. Prior initiatives included urban cultural preservation and government information disclosure. They also occupied public spaces to declare their stance, supporting victims or raising the visibility of the LGBT community. I'm sorry, actually there is a male advocate, against hepatitis B discrimination. We can see him, Unfortunately, he was accused during the MeToo movement for sexual assaulting a volunteer from his organization, the organization he worked. So, 艺人平, the NGOs that male advocates Li Chuan worked with, Umbrella Human Rights Network collaborate with the feminist organization, Feminist Voices. Together, they planned a series of young feminist accountability actions, starting with the Occupy men's toilets. Yeah. So we can see that this is the result of combining 艺人平's accountability repertoires with the feminist ideas. So using performance art, that is highlighting issues in dramatic way in public space, female students have voiced the demand to the government regarding gender discrimination in education, employment, and public space planning, feels that official organizations like All China Women's Federation had not previously addressed. They also use the status as victims of gender discrimination to sue or file complaints against those responsible for discrimination, make demands within the existing legal and policy framework, and relevant government departments are relatively powerless. That's important. Yeah. So that's not much political risk. At the time, as a result, the media can supportively report the actions, prompting policy response. In China, university admissions for certain specialized fields like minority language, broadcasting, military, and police program imposed many restrictions on female applicants. This results in higher cutoff scores for female students than male students in the early admission rounds of the college, sometimes by several dozen points. So therefore, young feminists in Guangzhou shaved their head in public at a landmark historical site, demanding explanation from the Ministry of Education. Similarly, concerning the gender discrimination in employment, before the complaints, recruitment advertisements could openly say men only, and the government had never intervened effectively. So I would like to briefly introduce the differences between the young generation of feminists and the veterans from the 1980s. The leaders of the first generation of women's NGO around the time of the Beijing World Conference on Women were mostly experts from government think tanks or China Women's Federation. In contrast, the younger generation comprises freelancers and full-time NGO workers, many of whom were born under the one-child policy or belong to the generation where the proportion of women receiving higher education then has begun to surpass that of men. I use the typology of post-socialist activism described by Petrova and Taro to distinguish between these two generations, transactional and participatory. The veterans' primary resources were the informal networks within the government. They collaborated on pilot programs such as training women villager officials, land rights for rural women, and community-based domestic violence programs with local governments and attribute the success of these programs to government officials, thereby influencing government policies and the perspectives. The younger generation, lacking government resources, act as a pressure groups. They were supported by market-oriented media, accustomed to conducting government oversight. Here is an excerpt from the training camp materials of the young feminist training camp. The core of the wave, of this wave of feminist movement is mobilizing the power of women. This also laid the groundwork for the suppression. The danger comes from grassroots mobilization and the awakening of the masses. This was during the 2013 two sessions, the National People's Congress and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, when the newspaper with the largest readership reported on the inequality of college admission scores because the young women lobbied the representatives. Essentially, two sessions is the only opportunity for the market-oriented media to engage with central government officials. The Minister of Education was questioned by reporters and had to respond. This represents the pinnacle achievement of young feminist accountability actions. All of this happened before Xi's speech. Maybe the speech was a little bit late. Advocacy against the Ministry of Education is more likely to succeed because young people, community for which this ministry is responsible, and the ministry is relatively powerless in government. This is an action that brings together different generations of feminists to address the pervasive, never before addressed sexual harassment in higher education, and is likely to be the last collaboration between those generations. One of its legacies is the anti-sexual harassment document issued by the Ministry of Education, which was used as a reference for higher education cases in the MeToo movement. Its accountability pressure comes from marketized media and professional journalists transitioning to the internet when the traditional media was already in its twilight. Also, Weibo, a social media, a Twitter-like social media platform, was at its peak of internet instant then. Its response to the feminist movement was quite subdued during the period. We will discuss the reason later. Before 2015, Weibo supported only one feminist event. In 2013, a resort city in Hainan Island, an elementary school principal took two of his students and a government official to spend the night at hotels. After parents found the children, the police claimed that the students were not sexually assaulted, and that it was the female students who have actively requested to stay overnight. The principal and the official only received administrative dismissal. Around this time, Ye Haiyan posted a photo on Weibo. Millions, including many police officers and government employees, together with other netizens, widely imitated his repertoire. So I want to emphasize that at that time, Weibo was a public sphere dominated by male opinion leaders. Ye Haiyan, a feminist for sex workers' rights, was supported by men in a way. They saw her as representing sexual liberation. She dared to directly criticize police misconduct. Opposition to the government was also the position of male opinion leaders at that time. In the end, the perpetrators were sentenced to more than 10 years in prison for rape. This event also inspired the creation of 2 award-winning films. However, in China, activists' public life are very short-lived. Once they gain influence and attract government attention, they face varying degrees of restriction, harassment, and persecution. Especially, activists with weaker socioeconomic status are likely to face the most direct violence. This is a photo of Ye Haiyan and her daughter during one of the many evictions by the police from cities in the south since she was released from the detention. Her daughter is now in United States attending college, but recently they have been worried about the situation. Ye Haiyan's current work in China is painting ceramics, which makes it impossible for her to afford her daughter's tuition in the United States. The government needed time to understand why feminist issues quickly gain support. So initially, they banned the coverage of feminist actions in the South and prohibited 2 sessions representatives from being interviewed by unauthorized media. In 2015, 5 feminists were arrested for planning a mass anti-sexual harassment sticker campaign during the 2 sessions. Given the high profile of the Feminist 5 in the West, I want to elaborate on this case. This case marked a turning point in the relationship between the feminist movement and the government. Later, on the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Conference, World Conference on Women, the arrest of Feminist 5 garnered significant international attention. The rescue effort demonstrated the strong mobilization capability of domestic and international feminist communities, leading the government to believe that anti-China forces were behind the feminist issues. Since 2016, feminist actions have increasingly become politically sensitive. Starting in 2014, the decline of print media coupled with censorship reduced coverage of feminist actions. So how did the feminists connect with public? As Weibo transitioned from a public forum to a more diversified entertainment and information platform, it developed a new commercial model. This shift provides an opportunity for the feminist movement. We don't have time to go into details of the Weibo's user transformation. In brief, male liberal elites who opposed the existing system became primary targets during the 2013 internet crackdown due to the threat to the government's legitimacy. The child share prostitution scandal marked the big VIPs becoming a major government focus. Additionally, through commercial strategies like collaborating with Alibaba, Weibo gained a monopoly position. The internet crackdown drove middle-aged men off the platform, while the new content strategy attracted young people and women on Weibo. Women were more willing to spend money and were more active, which made generating revenue easier for the platform. Why has feminist discussion flourished on Weibo after 2015? The platform's commercial orientation inevitably influenced the algorithm recommendation, affecting content producers who use feminist topics to drive traffic. Between 2015 and 16, the feminist movement began to turn to social media platforms. Weibo's business model and the feminist movement's influence made it constant source of criticism of traditional gender norms and anger at gender-based violence. During this period, feminist organizations successfully organized several internet campaigns. For example, the Beijing-based feminist organization, Feminist Voices, organized an event against misogyny at the State TV Spring Festival Gala. This was politically sensitive because CCTV is the main propaganda machine, and the Spring Festival Gala is an important nationalist mobilization event. Due to the political sensitivity, the campaign was not widely disseminated. However, it plays a very important role in mobilizing and educating new women netizens. And here is a Girls' Day case in 2016. In recent decades, a tradition of celebrating Girls' Day has emerged in Chinese university. This hot day is highly gender discriminatory, focusing on boys expressing love for girls. A year after feminist fighters were arrested, large-scale activities in physical space for Women's Day were no longer possible. So the Women's Awakening Network initiated this campaign instead. Within a week, the campaign garnered as much attention as the United Nations Women's He for She initiative, which had relied on numerous movie stars to build its momentum over several years. The topic was discussed in all major media outlets nationwide, including newspaper, website, and television. So Girls' Day implies that girls are not women, and the girls belong to a higher socioeconomic class than women. It means not celebrating Women's Day, representing a lack of concern for women's citizenship and rights, and dividing women's solidarity. Girls' Day also means putting girls in a place of subordinate gender. We are loved but not respected. We call everyone to write down the demands at locations where they experienced gender discrimination. Hundreds of people posted pictures in response and made campaigns at the campuses. And all the social media bloggers produce content based on this theme. And additionally, some students groups carried out activities at the campuses and localized the campaign. The left is a banner from a university gender equality association, which the authority took down just a few hours later. The association was also forced to disband. Many people might not understand why such a campaign is considered a political action. Chinese university campuses are strictly controlled, and all banners must go through rigorous scrutiny. On campuses, time and space are political. However, the university authorities were lenient with Girls' Day banners, even those toxic messages. This is the authoritarian version of Habermas' civic privatism concept, allowing people to focus on the private sphere and not public life. Toxic entertainment and leisure life and empty ideology are two sides of the same coin. So what we opposed was a campus environment that had become a breeding ground for gender discrimination and sexual harassment, rather than the incubator of social progress they should be. What is the long-term impact of this campus movement? Starting the following year, feminist organizations faced threats and could no longer organize such campus activities. However, opposition to Girls' Day have already become a Women's Day tradition in China. Even without the mobilization of women's organizations, many groups continue to advocate against Girls' Day and express their anger. So 3 years later, a student at the University of Political Science and Law burned a Girls' Day banner on campus. And there are also policewomen joined the campaign. Before 2017, feminist organizations were able to use social media to mobilize more participants and give the movement greater momentum. The organization were at the heart of the movement, providing cultural resources, while participants from all walks of life localized the movement in their own communities. For instance, young feminist Zhang Leilei crowdfunded money to purchase anti-sexual harassment ad space in the subway in Guangzhou, but the subway company rejected the deal by the police demand. So we decided to call on 100 people in 100 cities to take small billboards to the street like Zhang Leilei and take photos of each city's landmarks or other places. This action led to the Women's Federation and the subway placing their own anti-sexual harassment advertisement in subsequent years. In 2017, feminist organizations lost important funders due to the implementation of the overseas NGO law. Not only Chinese domestic foundations are interested in gender equality, but even legally registered overseas NGOs have been forced to reduce the funding on gender issues. More than just funding is involved. The governance of the feminist movement is systematic. It includes the suppression of feminist organizations and individuals, while incorporating agendas such as anti-sexual harassment and opposition to Girls' Day into the work of official Women's Federation and the Communist Youth League, and attempt to incorporate youth communities. Most importantly, they have begun to use information manipulation to undermine the credibility of feminist organizations and to commit cyber violence against the feminist activists. For instance, in the first year of the overseas NGO law, we could no longer launch campaigns in campuses. And the newspaper of All China Women's Federation copied the anti-Girls' Day article from the first year, which received millions of reads. With the arrival of MeToo, the feminist movement regained momentum. It's not just 56 men. In my recent article, more than 80 men are involved. Complaints were concentrated in sectors with lower power hierarchies, education, media, and nonprofit. And MeToo is heavily censored on social media, so feminists gave it a Chinese name, rice burning, which sound like MeToo in Mandarin. This is from the first trial of the most renowned case. The perpetrator, Zhu Jun, is the most famous host of the state television network. The victim, Xian Zi, reported the incident to the police when it happened, but the police covered up the case. Hundreds of people gathered at the courthouse gateway, and supporters from other cities sent food, drinks, and warm items through delivery. Those present live streamed the event online. Seeing this, we know that social media certainly offered a connection role, replacing some of the organization's functions and connecting survivors and volunteers at home and abroad. But social media couldn't automatically make everything happen. Local communities fostered by the feminist movement played an important role in resolving the MeToo cases. Localized networks of action make the most of the familiarity with the environment and the system to diffuse risk. They were particularly prominent in university accountability, with 10,000 students from 8 universities sent letters of advice to the alma maters. At the same time, feminist organizations were still playing a role in communication and solidarity collaboration, victim support, and legal aid, but in a low-profile way in the background. In addition, citizen media performs accountability function in a context where the state tightly controlled marketized media. There has been little progress in the MeToo movement, justice against sexual harassment, with few complaints upheld by courts. However, sexual harassment is now a recognized course of action, and the law finally defines the concept of sexual harassment clearly. Most importantly, policy and legal progress against sexual violence largely result from pressure from the civil feminist movement. The last part of the post-COVID era, a period of increased social control. In the top photo, we see Huang Xueqing, an independent journalist who stood out in the MeToo movement. In 2019, she was detained for 3 months for publishing an article supporting Hong Kong. After her release, she continued to work on cultivating young activists. In 2022, she disappeared on her way to the airport after receiving the UK Chevening Scholarship. After being illegally detained for 2 years, she had her first trial last year, but the verdict is still pending. Meanwhile, feminism remains a hot topic on social media and can bring personal achievement. The woman in the bottom photo is a social media influencer. During the lockdown in Wuhan, she mobilized an effort to donate sanitary products to female healthcare workers in Wuhan, raising millions of yuan of supplies. As a result, she became a new kind of feminist media favorite, focusing on women's sexual health. She has publicly announced that she was trying to join the Communist Party and hashtag the Hong Kong female chief executive as the women workers. She never explicitly state that she supports feminism, but rather frame it as girls helping girls. This was called pink feminism, pink. Due to the Hong Kong protests and the COVID-19, China's relationship with the Western world has become tense, making nationalist mobilization more important. Amid this wave of propaganda, feminism has been a critical voice. One notable incident is the chained women case, which drew national attention to a mentally disabled woman who was chained by her neck. She has been repeatedly trafficked and forced to bear 8 children over 20 years. The trafficking of mentally disabled women in rural areas is common, and the local government's successive announcements only fueled public outrage. The anger of female users on social media was a crucial force in keeping this issue in spotlight for many months, and some feminist groups and individuals participated in various actions. Despite attempts by state media to focus on Yi Linggu, a top American Chinese athlete who won gold for China. Actually, she's from Stanford, as the main highlight of the Winter Olympics. The chained woman incident overshadowed this narrative. A popular saying was, "You are 1 billion recognitions away from being Yi Linggu, but one blow away from being the chained mother." Another case, is Jiangshan Jiao. The space for real campaigns is scarce, leaving only space for criticism. Jiangshan Jiao incident, Jiangshan Jiao and Hong Qiman were virtual hosts launched by the Central Committee of the Communist Youth League. The names derived from Mao Zedong's poetry, meaning beautiful country and red flag everywhere. At the time, during the early days of COVID-19, the official media was simultaneously erasing women's contributions and using isolated stories of female healthcare workers shaving their heads and working to the point of miscarriage for propaganda. This launch created a backlash among netizens. Within hours, the Communist Youth League was forced to permanently abandon the use of this pair. One of the most well-known responses was from a feminist activist who posted 50 questions that I'm sorry, no annotation, post 50 questions that resonated with the public. This sparked widespread engagement, with some people recording themselves reading the questions in different dialects and editing the recording into videos. There's an English version you can find on YouTube. So I would like to share some observation of the white paper movement. A common saying that leadership of women and sexual minority was crucial in the white paper movement. However, the protest against the zero COVID policy also included workers' struggles and individual and collective resistance by citizens, not just women and sexual minorities. This group have better social capital, such as support networks and communication skills, making them more visible and easier to assist. So, however, gender equality has been a starting point for many young women to develop critical thinking and engage in public events. Through experiencing repression, censorship, and attacks, they gain a deeper understanding of broad social change. On the other hand, I also recognize that the transformation organization structure had led to the ideological change. They are more influenced by anarchist ideas such as mutual aid and the direct action, rather than having expectations and interest in systematic reforms like liberals. Reflecting on the past decades, the feminist movement has transitioned from being a peripheral issue deemed neither important nor dangerous by the state to becoming a target of state governance. This governance has extended from feminist organizations to ordinary participants and critics. On the other hand, the new feminist movement emerging as an external pressure group has powerfully advanced issues of gender discrimination as well as sexual violence, area where the All China Women's Federation have never addressed. These achievements have created anxiety within the official Women's Federation, compelling the government to respond with policy change. This more ads and subway anti-harassment aids and the bookstore displays. The legacy of the feminist movement now remains in both commercial and government-controlled public space. Through legacy media and social media, feminist organizations and groups developed a model of feminist organizing based on politics of the individual that ordinary people could easily replicate. This mobilized the potentially feminist public and greatly accelerates the spread and action of feminism among the public. In a repressive environment, women activists were forced to leave their jobs, go into exile, or face imprisonment. Yet, while an individual's public life was ephemeral, the collective life of the movement, sustained by people's successive effort, is infinite. Thank you for listening.